This is Jane Low on site at Marina Bay Sands, and I'm at the Token 2049 conference, and this is a flagship conference at the Asia Crypto Week. And with me, I'm very pleased to have Jeff Bandman, who is with Punk 6549.
6529.
6529, right? Too many numbers.
There's so many numbers. Yes, 6529.
6529. So thank you very much for your time today, Jeff.
Oh yeah, Jane, great to, thanks for having me, and looking forward to getting to know you and getting to know your listeners and watchers.
Oh, excellent, right. Okay, so first, Jeff, tell us about 6549.
Okay, so 6529. Well, why don't I start? I'll just do a brief introduction of myself and then talk about Punk 6529 and the things we're doing in the 6529 kind of group. You know, you're going to have me saying 6549 before the end of this. No. It's all good stuff, right? If we can't have fun, what's the point of doing all these things?
Yeah, that's right.
And especially if we're talking about NFTs, which are you know, I think part of what excites people about NFTs, it's NFTs in a way, you know, they come from kind of the digital world, from the kind of the crypto world, but I think are really, you know, we think of it as it's where, you know, crypto has met its consumer moment, and, you know, with any new technology, you know, how can you tell when it's reached its moment of consumers, when instead of talking about sort of the nerdy underlying technical details, which lots of people, including me and my colleagues, also find interesting, you know, people are talking about the punks and the apes and the penguins.
That's right.
And so I'm, as I said, Jeff Bandman. I'm a Chief Operating Officer and also a Chief Legal Officer for the 6529 group of companies. We do quite a number of things. First of all, our name, it comes from my colleague who is the pseudonymous Punk 6529. For those who are not familiar, are certain NFTs that are in the profile picture or sort of avatar. The CryptoPunks, which are really, I say, kind of very OG, you know, they were made in a series of 10,000, so each of them is individually numbered. So my colleague, who is really regarded and, you know, I believe is, you know, one of the top thought leaders, influencers, as well as collectors and investors in NFTs, and is also a great champion of the Open Metaverse, and we're going to be talking about what the Open Metaverse means and why. Right, and so Punk 6529 itself, its attributes, it's Punk that's wearing a hoodie, it's got a little 5 o'clock shadow, it's wearing cool glasses. You know, I would say it's a slightly cooler version of what Punk 6529 himself is like in real life, and you know, I've known him in real.
It's not you, obviously.
No, it's not. It's not me. It's not me. No. So you know, it's a slightly cooler version of the person, but you know, I think that you know, one of the reasons people have NFTs or avatars, you know, is to be a representation of them in the digital world. I think if we think back on our lives over the last 5 or 10 years, have they become more or less digital? Of course, they've become a lot more digital. As we move forward over the next 5 or 10 years, they will be more digital, and we will want to have ways of expressing ourselves and representing ourselves in these digital worlds.
Right.
It doesn't mean we're just going to stay in our rooms where our personal spaces all day long and never have in-person human interactions, but you know, through the digital realm is part of how we will engage with our friends, with our communities. There will be many communities that we feel alignment with. We will, you know, hopefully we will align through those, and therefore people have these kind of digital personas they will use. And you know, part of the way we think about these kind of digital spaces is that as people spend more and more time in these digital spaces, they're going to want to have digital objects that, you know, reflect them, their values, their communities, their interests. And really one of the differences between what people kind of talk about as Web 2 and looking ahead to Web 3 is we can have a society where people own their digital objects. And, you know, today in what we think of as Web 2, you know, if you own a song on Apple Music, you don't really own it. You just have a license to it. If you have a book on Kindle, if you have a book on Audible, those you are just licensing under a service agreement or end user license agreement. If you have a video on YouTube, if you put a photograph on Instagram, even if you're the one who put it there.
As a content creator.
As a content creator, you took a photograph. You put it on Instagram, it's there subject to their terms of license and service agreement.
That's right.
So Web3 will enable people to control and own their digital object.
And you talked about the metaverse, right? And that is also another term that people have many interpretations of. So tell us, what is the definition of metaverse under your sort of in your own mind?
Sure. And I think that there will be, more than one metaverse. There will be many metaverses. I think that it's a term that can be very daunting for people. So the way I think about the metaverse is that the metaverse is going to be the next generation of the internet. The metaverse is when we spend screen time looking at our browsers, looking at our phones, interacting with our technology. The technology will gradually get better and more immersive. The metaverse doesn't mean, I'm necessarily putting on a hardware headset that's owned by Mark Zuckerberg or some subsidiary or affiliate of Mark Zuckerberg and wearing that with a headset and hand things. The metaverse will just be, we will discover the technology gets better and faster and more immersive. And, things will look, instead of two-dimensional, will start to be more three-dimensional. So, the way I define the metaverse, it's, kind of evolutionary. It's the next generation of our screen time and browser time, combined with participation in one or more social networks. There will probably be one or more metaverses. It won't be necessarily a single one, just the same way that you go to multiple websites or you go to multiple apps on your phone. But that kind of collection of things will be the metaverse.
And you talk about the metaverse, addressable market size is infinite. So tell us what you mean by that.
Sure. So what I mean by that, the addressable market size is infinite, is that anybody with an internet connection, which will be more and more people, obviously even currently it's in, I believe, between 4 and 5 billion, and over time that should be even more. Anybody with an internet connection will be able to access it. So the addressable population is everybody who has access to the technological connection and some sort of device or mechanism, whether individually owned or shared, for accessing it. Is that everybody in the world? Clearly there are people today who don't necessarily have access to technology devices, to electricity grids or other power sources. That type of inclusiveness is going to evolve. I think there are many people who care about that, including us, and we'll be working to kind of promote access to it. But literally, who will have access to the metaverse? Everybody. And then the other part that comes with it is, well, who will have objects in the digital metaverse? And the way I think about it is that, right now, in a room of people, and you say, who owns NFTs? How many NFTs do you own? I'd say, even though it seems like there's been a ton of hype and a lot of attention about all this, the reality is there's a limited number of people who own NFTs. Maybe it's a handful of million, single-digit millions. Maybe it's more than that. Obviously, there are billions of people in the world. And it's going to need to get easier, the user interface, what happens if you lose it. Right now, if you want to buy an NFT, you have to go somewhere. Maybe you get your hands on some Ethereum, which there are probably tens of millions of people who know how to do that, but then you have to kind of get it into a wallet, and then you have to connect that wallet to a platform like an OpenSea or SuperRare. It's a lot of friction. It's complicated.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
But, over time, those user interfaces are going to get easier. They're going to get more seamless. They'll be integrated with things that people are already doing, Jane. And then on the flip side of that, for people who have an NFT and they want to look at it, you're looking at it maybe on your phone, you're looking at it in a browser, it doesn't render, it doesn't bring out all the things that it does. So I think the user experience will also improve as well.
You talked about, that's one of the questions I want to bring up. You talked about, a lot of work needs to be done in the front end as well as in the back end to make this adoption of the metaverse happen, and this addressable market size that's infinite, a realizable goal. So can you tell us a little bit about the back end that needs to, the work that needs to be done?
Sure. On the back end, that's things like, how are these digital objects stored? Where are they stored? Can you access them when they're offline, when you're offline? How do you access these? How much storage and utilization is there? And then how can that be done in a way that's faster and more efficient? Some of these things are big. They will be bigger, as whether they are art, NFTs, they're not necessarily static. They're doing things like sort of like a little digital movie. Sometimes it's doing things in reaction to real-time data.
Yeah.
These can be computationally intensive, both to generate and to render. As an example, one of the artists that we've collected in our 6529 NFT fund, Refik Anadol, works from LA, and one of his works is based on a Gaudi National Heritage UNESCO site in Barcelona called Casa Batia, which I'm almost certainly pronouncing incorrectly. And what he did in full collaboration with the various authorities is to place sensors all over the building that detect wind, rain, barometric pressure, humidity, wind. I think there's about 16 different things, and those generate data through his algorithm, and via that, the NFT keeps adapting and moving in real time.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, no, it's great. If we have show notes, I can provide a link so that your fans can kind of see. We have a 4-minute video that's really
that's cool. All right. Okay.
Capsulates it. But so I think that the things to support it, the picks and shovels, the user interface, storage, protection, what happens if you lose something or lose your password, all those things need to get improved, and people are working on all these things that the user experience of people with their NFTs becomes easier, less scary, more friendly. And I'll tell you, a friend of mine has, I guess his son is 8 now, and maybe about a year and a half ago, as my friend started collecting NFTs, he got some NFTs for his son, and his son, enjoys his NFT collection, and he, prints them out and puts them on his wall, just like he enjoys them as much as he likes his dinosaurs. To him, the fact that this is a digital object that he owns, it's just his, and he doesn't differentiate or think, well, gee, this is a less interesting thing to own just because it's digital. And so I think as these natively digital generations come along, it will be perfectly natural for people to have, physical objects and digital objects. And what's convenient about...
When do you think that will happen? Obviously, it depends on countries. So you are from US, so when do you think that the adoption rate in the United States, when do you foresee that sort of happening? Kind of widespread adoption between 5 and 10 years. Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. I think there's adoption taking on now, and brands are doing their, we at 6529 we're a mission-based organization. In addition to operating the NFT fund, we've built an Open Metaverse initiative we call OM. Please come visit us, go to 6529.io and look at the OM. We have a museum district where not just our own collections, but those of many other NFT artists, collectors, communities have gone. We're trying to create a metaverse that where there's actually stuff going on, where sometimes people think, okay, well, I'm just going to go buy land in the metaverse, and then I'm going to get rich off that land in the metaverse.
That's still a very Web2 sort of mentality, isn't it?
Well, it really is, and I think an interesting analogy is that, whether it's sort of an Instagram address, which is also very Web2, or a website, like we're not going to run out of web addresses, we're not going to run out of these, we're not going to run out of land in the metaverse or the metaverses, because it's just, numerical coordinates. Now, having said that, is Kim Kardashian's, Instagram page or website very valuable? Of course it is, not because of scarcity, because she sort of built up a community and a brand and followers and people who go there. I think these things are social networks, and like if I were trying to pitch you on opening up an Instagram account, and I said, well, there's this cool new technology and it lets you post your own photos, it lets you look at your friends' photos, it uses machine learning, it's built on Python, and it will only cost you $15,000 to join. You would look at me like I was a lunatic. For most people, who is going to join a social network that costs, an insane amount of money? I think in an open metaverse, you'll be able to move around from point to point just as easily as you type in websites. But it's very, very exciting for owners of IP and content creators because if the metaverse is based on protocols instead of services, you're not going to have to pay 30% to the Apple Store or the Google Store or 47% to Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, because ultimately these things are all about databases. If you are a content creator, if you're a media company, if you're a sports league whose people, watch your event streaming online or are fans of the different teams, it's a matter of you're kind of keeping track of things in databases. And, people have these proprietary databases, and then they can charge you for access and for maintaining, gating the access. Well, what if everybody used this big, free, open database called the blockchain? And then, you can manage it yourself. You don't have to pay, a toll keeper or gatekeeper. You can have direct relationships with, if you're an artist, with your collectors and with your community. If you're a media company or a fashion brand, you can have those, direct relationships, and you can, really shape the user experience.
Yeah, there's another question I want to ask you, but I'm very conscious that we're running out of time. Sure. So it's about the legal process, about attaching or tagging the NFTs to the actual sort of object that you have bought the NFT on. But I think that's quite a long conversation, the legal framework behind it.
Yeah, look, I think that a lot of discussion around what the right IP models are going to be for the metaverse, even just for art, whether it's Creative Commons, CC0, there's kind of a spectrum of different rights, what might be retained. Then you start to open up definitely another can of worms when you start to have digital twins, or when you have, a luxury object, or any object that's paired with a physical object. How are those links maintained? I was originally trained as a lawyer, and still, work on some regulatory or legal issues. But, I will tell you that the law of the metaverse
it's a whole
different thing.
It's a Web3 law.
Yeah. I mean, and so, there's some building blocks that are going to be there. Who will regulate the metaverse? What will my rights be in the metaverse?
Yeah.
What's
I think that person in the metaverse, right?
Right. What is a person? So I think there's a lot of things, but I think for those of you who are thinking about career choices or what do you want to spend your time, and if you want to work on something that's evolving and new, certainly anything legal or regulatory in the metaverse will be, an opportunity to shape the future, and probably a pretty interesting thing to be spending time on.
All right, yeah. Thank you, Jeff, for your time today, and thank you for that career recommendation and tip for our listeners and audience. Don't just stick with music or art, but think about the legal aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I the advice I used to give for people who wanted, kind of jobs was to work in anti-money laundering for crypto, because I think that, there's also going to be a lot of, jobs for that in financial institutions.
That's right.
But, when I think about that old career advice and then the new career advice, which is to, be kind of a metaverse lawyer, I think metaverse lawyer sounds like a lot more fun to me.
All right, okay.
But
You'll
I
be
wish
a champion
everyone
for that then.
All righty, great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Jeff.